सर पहले यकीन था अब आदत पड़ गई है. And when a citizen adjusts to the injustice instead of resisting it, governance has already failed in its most fundamental duty. As officers, we are trained to be objective, but objectivity without fairness slowly turns into cruelty. Good afternoon. Before I start, let me ask you to do something unusual. Yeah? For 5 seconds, do not clap, do not move, do not look into your phone, and don't try to anticipate where this talk is going. Just notice the silence in the hall. The silence is not empty, it's not accidental, it's loaded. Because in governance, silence decides more lives than speeches ever will. Not orders, not press conferences, not even well worded policies. But what happens between the two decisions? That space where nothing is officially happening, yet something irreversible is taking shape. Today, I want to talk about that space, that pause, that invisible interval where the fate of citizen often changes. Without drama, without chaos, without anyone held accountable for it. My name is Jagdeep Singh. I'm a civil servant working in the public administration of Jammu and Kashmir. Over the years, I have conducted elections under difficult circumstances, handled law and order situation where every decision carried consequence beyond paper, sat through long grievance hearings where people spoke not just with words but with exhaustion, and signed files that moved lives forward and some that didn't. So this talk is not about any policy design. It's not about schemes, rules, or institutional reform. It's about what governance does to their human beings on both sides of the table. Because governance is not merely a system of administration, it's a continuous interaction between authority and vulnerability, between power and expectation, between what is technically right and what is morally necessary. Now, let me ask you a simple question. Yeah? How many of you have ever visited a government office? Now, raise your hand. Raise your hand if, while walking to that office, you felt confident, relaxed, and certain that you would be heard without any resistance or suspicion. I can see some hands up. That discomfort you felt, that hesitation before entering the room, that careful choice of words, that is not inefficiency alone. That is psychology. Governance, whether we like to admit it or not, operates as much on the human mind as it does on the files and rules. Citizens don't walk into your offices carrying only applications. They carry past experiences, social hierarchies, fear of authority, and a quiet anxiety about being dismissed. And officers, on the other hand, they do not sit behind those desks carrying only power. They also carry workload, pressure, institutional memory, and emotional fatigue that slowly hardens into distance. This invisible psychological gap is where governance is truly experienced and not just in policy documents. Dear friends, in the recent elections, I witnessed something extraordinary. People would stand in queues for hours, elderly citizen leaning on sticks, young women holding their voter slips tightly, and first time voters unsure yet determined. Not because it was convenient, not because the system was flawless, but because they believed that somewhere the system listens. And that belief is delicate. It does not survive repeated neglect. Governance is not just about managing crowds or conducting administrative processes efficiently. It's about protecting belief, especially in places where history has already tested patience. Because once the belief breaks, no amount of force, messaging, or administrative efficiency can repair it quickly. Friends, I read a line somewhere. The greatest violence is unconsciousness. Most harm in governance is unconscious. No officer, I repeat, no officer ever wakes up in the morning intending to hurt anyone. No system is ever designed with cruelty as its stated objective. Damage happens gradually. With delayed files that never feel urgent, postponed meetings that kept getting rescheduled, applications that remain unanswered without explanation, corridors where people keep waiting without being acknowledged. This is indifference dressed as neutrality. And this is dangerous precisely because it looks clean, legal, and defensible. You know, I still remember a grievance hearing very clearly. A man walked into my office with documents perfectly arranged, every paper tagged, every date underlined. He spoke softly. He didn't argue. He did not raise his voice, and he did not even complain aggressively. After listening to him, I asked him a simple question. Why didn't you come earlier? He took a pause and said, सर पहले यकीन था अब आदत पड़ गई है. Ladies and gentlemen, that sentence stayed with me. Because hopelessness does not shout, it does not protest, it simply adjusts its expectations. And when a citizen adjusts to the injustice instead of resisting it, governance has already failed in its most fundamental duty. Now let me ask you another question, right? How many of you believe that rules are necessary? Yeah? Now raise your hand if you believe rules alone are enough to deliver justice. The gap between the two answers is where governance either becomes humane or purely mechanical. Rules create structure, but awareness creates fairness. As officers, we are trained to be objective, but objectivity without fairness slowly turns into cruelty because it stops seeing context, consequences, and human cost. As officers, we have seen files where everything was perfectly as per rules, every clause complied with, every procedure followed. Yet, something was profoundly wrong. Because governance is not mathematics, it's moral engineering. What you delay, what you ignore, what you choose not to notice defines your real authority far more than the powers written in law. So here is the uncomfortable truth. The system never fails loudly. It fails politely, with correct formats, with clean paperwork, with legal justifications that sounds reasonable, and then the citizen leaves. Not angry, not violent, not rebellious, but resigned. And that resignation is far more dangerous than the anger because it signals disengagement. Let's return to the silence once more. Think of the last time you waited for an answer that never came. At first, you waited patiently, then you followed up, then you told yourself that it would take time, and finally, you stopped expecting anything at all. That emotional journey from hope to acceptance, that is governance experienced on the other side. So here is the revelation. The most powerful instrument in governance is not authority, not force, not even law. It is discretion. And discretion without compassion creates a system that may look flawless on the paper, but still fail the people it is meant to serve. Because discretion decides which file moves today, whose voice is heard, and whose life waits longer without explanation. Someday, no one will remember our designations, our postings, or the orders we signed. But someone will remember this कि उस दिन मेरी बात सुनी गई या नहीं. And in public service, that memory, quiet, lasting, and personal, is your real legacy. Thank you.